In today's episode, I sit down with Dayalan to break down exactly how he's built one of the most engaged local communities in a state agency without relying on hard selling or traditional tactics. From newsletters and social media to events and podcasting, we dive in how putting community first can transform your brand, your database, and your business. Hope you enjoy the episode. If you're an estate agent listening to this, it's worth asking yourself this simple question. Is your current system genuinely helping you grow? Or is it just helping you manage the workload? Many agencies today are incredibly busy, but still finding the profits, efficiency, and headspace aren't improving at the same rate. Iceberg Digital have taken a different approach. Rather than building another standalone CRM system, they've created what they call a standalone AI operating system for estate agents, bringing prospecting, marketing, CRM, compliance, and even your website into one connected system. The focus is simple: improving revenue per employee and reducing unnecessary manual effort. If you're thinking about future-proofing your estate agency over the next few years, it's definitely worth exploring. You can book a demo at icebergdigital.co.uk. That's icebergdigital.co.uk. Dylan, welcome back to the podcast. You are now officially friend of the show. You've been on, this is your second time now, I think?
Thank you. Yeah, regular second time, and hopefully not the last either. Yeah.
Oh, well, you're always welcome back. It's an open door. We've got a really good conversation today because I went to I think it was the Women in Estate Agency conference a while ago, and they were talking about sort of the big thing or element that buyers are looking for from properties and when they make the next home is community. So not so much kind of like it's a 3-bed semi in Slough, but more like there's schools, there's events going on, there's like a mums group, there's like a guys thing going on, there's a football club, all that stuff going on. And I thought to myself, who has got a better community engagement or spirit than Dylan? So you are the man
Thank
to talk to about this. So I've built you up. So talk me through. So, for anyone who hasn't listened to the first podcast you've been on with ourselves, or is somehow not on your mailing list, which I think everyone is by default, who are you? Where are you from? Talk us through the estate agency journey.
Sure, no problem. I've been a estate agent for 6 years. I've been in property for a long time, but recently moved to Hillingdon in West London, which is near Heathrow Airport. Before that, I was living in Wembley, so more northwest London. But probably, like you touched on, in the last 4 years, I've really got, immersed in the local community, doing a lot of stuff outside of property in the local community. Just, yeah, it's almost like it all amalgamates together. And some of it's almost by accident, but a lot of it was quite purposeful as well. Let's get off the throat to get stuck in with the local community. Yeah.
And talk me through. So, how long have you lived in Hindon for in total? So, I guess we get an idea for the listeners whether it's like you've been there for 10 minutes, which obviously maybe more than that, or you've been there for 20 years. What sort of time scale have you been in the community for?
Yeah, it's only been 4 years. It feels like a lot longer, just because probably in the 40 years or so that I lived in a previous community, I knew a lot less people than I do in the 4 years in this community. So that goes to show that something's really changed. Yeah.
I think that sometimes people make the mistake of thinking, oh, I've not lived in this area for the last 20 years. I didn't go to school here, for example. I didn't go to college or university here. Therefore, I'm at a disadvantage. But I guess when you turned up in Hillingdon, you were a bit of a blank canvas with regard to sort of friend and network count. So what was the sort of first steps you made? You mentioned kind of 4 years ago, you started really kind of ramping it up. So what was the first direction you went in there to kind of improve your span?
I think just the idea of just getting to know people even on my street. So like for example, we just moved in just before Easter and even just went round and introduced ourselves to the neighbors, which we'd never done in our old community, and actually just gave them all an Easter egg and a little card and just say, hey, we're the new neighbors. Some of them was actually reciprocated with the kind of card back and that kind of thing, which is kind of, it's a bit unusual thing to do now, just to kind of write, say hi, we're your new neighbors. It's not done as much as it could have been. It could have been done in the past, maybe. I think just that was the first thing to start to just get to know people on a very, very, granular, just like small local level, just on your road. Then probably the other things I started to do was just inquire about what's going on in the area. So like find out about Chamber of Commerce, just go along to things, that kind of thing. That was probably one of the best things I did in terms of joining the local Chamber of Commerce, because you meet other local business people very quickly. And then just plugged into online things, so like local Facebook groups for Hillingdon, obviously Instagram, just like looking at all the tagged businesses for Hillingdon, that kind of thing. and just get to know people that way as well.
And I'm presuming I'm going to take a stab in the dark here, and I'm assuming your welcome to the neighborhood message wasn't, "Hi, I'm Dayalan. I'm also an estate agent, by the way. So if you ever want to think about selling your house at number 72 My Road, give me your details." I presume it's all very sort of organic. Hey, I'm your neighbor, and you just kind of happen to be an estate agent, effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And I felt that like I needed to just meet people, and I think I wasn't very proactive about trying to get local properties anyway, because I was getting property leads from my last area, and I was still trying to service that area as well. And so I didn't really have this big a push at the start to be a hyper local agent, where everything is in Hillingdon. And even to this day, to be honest, a lot of my properties, as you know, that are selling and renting aren't actually in the local area as well.
Mm. And I think it's kind of a because my worst nightmare is like networking events where we're like, "Hi, how are you? What do you do?" And then they move on to the next person. Like that's like literally my worst nightmare. And I think people can kind of smell that commission breath, should we say, a little while away. And I remember I went to an event a little while ago, and it was a American lady or a Canadian lady, North American lady, and she came up to me and was like, "Hi, what do you do?" And I was, "Oh, I'm Chris. Nice to meet you." She went, "Oh, I'm so and so. I do this." And she took a picture of my name tag, and I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was being like robbed or something. Took a picture of my name tag and then just disappeared. And I was like, okay, like what on earth just happened, sort of thing. So I think there's a definitely a good way to kind of spread community and word engagement about who you are and what you do. And then there's kind of like a what can I get from you? Who are you? Are you important to me? Yes or no? See you later sort of mindset to it, which probably isn't the best way to build a community, I would have thought.
No, and I can because I am a serial networker connector, and I would say that I can spot that a mile off, and most people can as well. And everyone's on a bit of a journey as well, like that. I'm that might have even been me before as well. Like just probably not quite as direct as that, but at least just a bit more about trying being more direct. Here's my business card. This is what I do, kind of thing. Whereas I've learned, and I love this phrase that just says connect because you care, not because you calculate. Not really trying to connect with people with an ulterior motive. I think that's the one thing. It's like, I genuinely, and I will probably always will love just people and just being intrigued by people and what they stand for, what they, what makes them tick, a bit about their background and what makes them who they are today. And so all of that kind of thing can just naturally come out, and that's a lot nicer. It lends itself to a lot nicer conversations than what do you do and here's what I do type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a lot of it's just about being interested, isn't it? It's just being interested in people and kind of, yeah, well, you did that. Why did you move here? And oh, when did you guys first meet? And when did you get your job there? Did you enjoy working there, sort of thing? Where I think, it's so refreshing to have someone who is interested in other people beyond kind of what they can get from themselves, who will really
Yeah,
open their arms to it.
awesome. Definitely, totally agree with that. Yeah.
So a lot of agents out there, and I'm not trying not to throw any shade here, but will kind of say they're sort of local experts, but they won't get involved kind of in activities sort of locally with regard to community events, etc. What do you think the difference between people sort of saying they're local and sort of actually being part of the community?
I think like to have the bridge between like your interests, for example, and getting involved. So, you're not going to pretend that you can be all about the local area, but there's going to be some things that you really, really resonate with, in the local area. But also just to take a bit of pride in the local area. I think that's the first thing. Like if you are um genuinely interested in making the community in your area a better place, you will naturally then find these kind of people that you kind of resonate with and support. Say, for example, local charities. Now, I'm not going to go and just say that, oh yeah, the local train spotting club is a great place for hang out because I wouldn't know anything about it, and I'm almost being, just dishonest by saying things that are more, are interesting to me, which aren't, So not everything is going to interest you, but you find those bridges between the things that are of interest to you and then just double down on them. For example, like I absolutely love the local cricket club here, and we started supporting them, sponsoring them, and having our boards with their logo on it and all that kind of stuff. But it was just a natural fit for me. I do love cricket as well, and I just love the idea that it's been around for 175 years, and by sponsoring them, it's a way for me to just make sure that tradition carries on, and so that's like important to me, so it comes across.
Okay, let's. So I'm kind of trying to tick these things off as they go through my head. So we've got sort of sponsorship of local events that you're sort of passionate about, to kind of be involved in the community, but not sort of just doing charity because you're like, oh well, it's a good thing to do. And there's a picture of me holding a 6 foot wide check. It looks good for the paper. So that's obviously a good place to start off with. You mentioned the networking side of things. So out of interest, I know the answer to this already. How big is your database currently?
26,500 people, and growing quickly by the day as well. Yeah.
So a lot of people, to say the least. And if I started up a cold business today from scratch, and someone said to me, you can either have, no people on your database and you have to start from scratch, or you got 26,000, I would take the 26,000 every single day of the week. Thank you very much. So how big has sort of networking and being part of networking groups, and sort of whether that's in the business community, whether that's sort of the normal community, how big has that kind of been a part of the growth?
Yeah, I think it has been a big part. So I do lettings, and so I think just generally from lettings and inquiries that come in, that's also been a big part. But I'd say it's boosted a lot by events. So I'm not shy to ask people's email address when I see them at if I'm doing a stand at an event. Sometimes it's a very very soft kind of ask as well. Like I don't actually talk about my property side. I just be like, for example, if I'm doing a family fun day, I would just say, oh, your kid can have a free go on the spin the wheel, but if you can just follow us on Instagram, that's all we charge. And some people will be like, what? Well, you're not charging for this game where you can win prizes, but it's just about being in the community. We're doing another one like that soon in the Ickenham Festival, which is like another fun day type thing. We're going to be there with our spin the wheel kind of hat on, community hat on, with spin the wheel and a couple of other games, but there won't be any mention about flyers and property stuff. So I think just that side of thing just um just involves gathering people's information, yes, like through email and Instagram, but even that, it's not like this big things like come and just sign up to our newsletter. It's not really like that. It's just a very very soft ask. Yeah.
I guess it's that kind of that public perception of like I just give, I just help, I'm here because I like cricket and I like the local community sort of thing. And there's a degree, I suppose, of sort of private selling. Like, it's kind of like very soft sales. And, here's our email date, what's your email address sort of thing. It's not massive in the grand scheme of things. And it's kind of, community first, estate agency second. But I think many people go into it kind of like estate agency first. I'm doing this community stuff because I want to get something from it. So therefore, everyone I deal with, I'm going to ask how they live in the local area for, what kind of house they got, are they thinking about selling it? And then I'm kind of just at the community event, kind of almost like a salesman, effectively.
Yeah, yeah, but I have had the odd, person kind of question your motives when you do, social media videos, for example, about the area. They go, "Oh, we just, he's underhand, just trying to sell properties, really," and that kind of thing. And you can never stop the cynical view. There will be people like that, but I think that genuinely people can see authenticity a mile off, and so for me, it's very very important to be authentic, but just to not to do anything basically with a kind of ulterior motive, and that will definitely come across.
So we've got this big database, which you've grown over that time from being part of community events and engagement and support and sponsorship, etc. If I was on your mailing list, which I am, full disclosure, what sort of things do I get from you? I presume it's not emails saying I'm the best estate agent in town, and do you want to sell your house?
No, yeah, I mean it's a real mixture. So when I try to describe it to people, I just kind of say I send out a uh, bi-monthly newsletter talking about myself, what I do in the community, what I get up to, and also a little bit about the property market. So it's not in a kind of egotistical way here. Come and just listen to what I talk about, or more about what I'm doing. It's more just about, I'm sure it'll be of interest in some way, so why don't you join? And I'm very kind of conscious that anyone that joins your newsletter, they're going to be getting weekly or every 2 weeks something from me. I don't want it to be this thing that they're just going to ignore and just not read, or just think, oh, here we go again, Dylan sending me another email. I want to just be able to add some kind of value to their life, even if it's a little bit of entertainment or even if it's a bit of inspiration, something that people think, you know what, I'm part of this kind of newsletter club and I'd love to be part of it and stay part of it. So that's just something that I'm always conscious that I don't want to be, I don't want them to ever feel like they're just a number on a email list. Yeah.
And I suppose it's the same sort of, talk about commission breath earlier on. I think people's commission breath when it comes to the internet is actually like more heightened than it is in real life sort of thing, because we're so used to like pop up boxes and fill this in and congratulations, you've won the lottery and whatever else it may be, that you're very skeptical about anything that comes through your inbox, that, that there's any kind of sales message on there. So I think it's, people are all probably more aware of it than they are probably in real life. Anything that comes through that says, click here to buy now or whatever it may be, you think, is this a bit too good to be true?
Yeah. And I'd say even it goes as far as when you actually go on evaluation, and you've actually not giving a hard sell in any way. And, there have been times when I have actually then said, I don't think it's the best time to sell. Or even why don't you keep it? And that kind of thing, just frees, obviously people have a good image of you, then it's like, very different to the average estate agent. That might be like just getting a commission out of every situation, but also frees you up and you just realize what you're doing is just basically serving the community. You're not actually, you feel good about yourself that you can actually not actually be putting your agenda ahead of theirs each time, and that should just translate to everything you're doing, your newsletter, your social media, and just your way of life. Yeah.
Well, you've segued me beautifully there with mentioning social media. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
You can definitely come back. So social media. So you've had some real bangers that have done really well. I know you've texted me a few times and said this one's gone viral and done really well. So what's the sort of content you're putting across on your social media and what gets the most engagement with your local area and the wider area?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll say there's not many people doing stuff in our local area, so there is this big vacuum to fill. So when I started to actually post lots of regular videos on the local area, it just popped up in local people's feeds all the time, and so there was that kind of vacuum to fill. I've tried lots of different things, and I think for me, the thing that gets the most engagement is anything to do with people's emotions and people's memories, nostalgia, that kind of thing. So I did one on the history of a local pub and how King Charles I hid there for a few hours once, and people are like, "Wow, I walked past that place and I never realized the history behind it," and that kind of thing. So discovering hidden history in the area, which every area ultimately has. It's like they might have had a monarch go to a pub near them, but at the same time, there's some kind of level of history to every single place in the country, I would say, within reason. And so people are very intrigued by that, but also nostalgia, because I do think that social media is a way, just like how Friends reunited when it first came on the scene. People are like, wow, I can, just harks you back to the years when you were at school and the people that you connected with, and they just got so excited by that. Same kind of thing, nostalgia just stirs up emotions. And like I've just done ones where I've just gone down the local high street and just said, "Oh, do you remember when this used to have this place and that place?" And people engage with that as well. So anything that kind of involves nostalgia and emotionals, especially good memories, but even other memories as well. Yeah.
And to give people an idea about how much engagement that gets, I think your pub one is one I've watched with like a white building, I think from memory. How many views or comments did that one get in total?
Yeah, so 300,000 on TikTok. Yeah, just under 300,000, I think. Yeah.
No, no big deal, just 300,000. Just Wembley Stadium, like what, 6 times over or whatever it may be. No big
Well, it
deal.
was it was quite funny because our content creator was like, "Oh, I think this is going to get up to 3,000 views at this rate," and then it's like overnight it ended up like 30,000. Before you know it, it went on another tenfold to 300,000. Yeah.
Just shows you how much people like to see content about their local area. Now, obviously, there's one part of it which is kind of property markets up, property markets down. But you think to yourself, okay, that's going to be interesting to a percentage of the population. But you think actually, here's an interesting story about this part of town, or here's an interesting story about, did you know this happened, or this is why this area is called this area. Did you know that sort of thing? There are people who are like, I had no idea. I lived in the area all my life, and I've never known that sort of thing. Or I drive past there twice, and I never knew it. You're kind of like the enabler to say, actually, this is what your community is about. The history in this area is so important. People kind of really resonate with that, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And I think my two kind of words when I think about a social media a persona, which I would just want to be myself, obviously, on social media. But the two things I always try to have a benchmark as to whether I'm doing on my posts is to be helpful and to be interesting. So, the interesting side comes from that kind of thing, and then helpful, I can, bring in, information on property that people might not know about as well, and even just being helpful about publicizing local events that people might not know about. So helpful and interesting, those are the two things that I always try and think of when I'm posting.
I love that. Yeah, I love it. It's kind of what's in it for them, not what's in it for you. Because obviously, what's in it for you, if you're like, oh, I've just listed a house and I've just sold a house, and I've just had a completion today, sort of thing. But no one really cares in the nicest possible way of doing it. I mean, your bank account might and your figures might do, but with regard to actually the public perception, they're like, okay, an estate agent sold a house. Big whoop.
Yeah, exactly.
So talk me through the progression. So we've covered off the networking side of things. We've covered off the sponsorship side of things, covered off your newsletter and your obviously an enormous database and that side of things as well. And we've kind of covered into the social media side. Talk me through the podcast. So I'm going to ask a very weighted question now. Where did the idea for the podcast come from?
Well, I was going to mention you anyway. So before it came to that, I like the idea. There's a guy called Simon Paget, is part of our Keller Williams network, and he talked a bit about just starting to put out videos about the local businesses and just promoting other local businesses, because we're all in the same boat. We could always do with extra help and promotion. And so to do that was just a very kind of a selfless thing, you could say, to just say, look, let's try and go and support other local businesses. So I started doing videos along that. It ended up being that we called it Heroes. So it was just like a little caption saying, just supporting local businesses or helping local businesses thrive, I think was the caption for it. And then what happened is from there, even when I mentioned it to yourself, then you just said, oh, you're almost doing all the work of a podcast, but not actually getting the benefit of a podcast. And for me, I'd always thought podcasts would involve a lot of work, like a lot of setting up and all the publicity and everything like that. But then, just from your idea, then I just said, okay, let's do it. And I didn't want it to be a business one. So I didn't want to be known as just a local business person, and that's it. There's so much more influence that a business person can give in the community rather than just be part of this big network of businesses. So from there, I just thought, let me just interview, local politicians or local charities and just anyone doing something good in the community. And where we are in Hillingdon, West London, it's there's a lot of division around certain things, in terms of like how we're treating, people that come in from abroad and just like lots of other different things that are just very contentious issues, you could say. And so there's a lot of negativity in local news, for example. So I wanted to just counter that and just have a real positive message about the area. I'm not saying it's a perfect area, but at the same time, there's so much good in the community that people don't know about. So I just wanted to give them a spotlight. And so that's where it took off. So Hillingdon Speaks, I started it just before Christmas. And now we're 10 episodes in. And the best bit about all of that is I don't ever feel like I need to be asking people now, because I was at a networking event with our chamber last week and people were asking me, can we come on your podcast? And we were excited to come on your podcast. So that's a really good thing. And going back to that bit about how sometimes networking can be a bit awkward and you might just stand there and just think, who do I need to talk to next or whatever? That podcast and just all our social media has meant that when we go to these networking events now, it is very, very easy. It's not, doesn't feel, I mean, I naturally like to talk to people, but naturally now people come up to you in the room and just talk about maybe what they've just seen on my social media, etc. So there's almost done my kind of socializing for me before I've even needed to say anything, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
100%. Always my advice. I can't remember who I was chatting to a while with. One of the Charlie from now from Keller Williams, and I remember chatting to him a while ago, and he was like, "I hate the thought of networking. Like, it really just doesn't sit very comfortable with me." And I was like, "If you post enough stuff on social media and you put your videos out there and your content out there enough, sort of thing, people will walk up to you and they're like, 'I love that video you did. I love that post you did,' and you're like, it makes your life so much easier because you don't have to go." Oh, I'm Chris. I'm your local estate agent. They know who you are. They know what you do. They
Yeah.
know what you're about. They've listened to you for a couple of hours or so, and they say, "Hey, how you doing? I like what you're doing." And you're like, "Great.
Yeah.
What do you do?"
Definitely. And then you're already gone past the kind of small talk, really, So I think that makes your networking easier, but also more enjoyable as well.
100%. So you decide to go down the route of the podcasting side of things. Where do you get your first one, two, three guests from? Because obviously it's always a good idea to kind of get a couple of episodes in the bag, so you can kind of get you a bit of breathing room to get some more guests on there. How did you find those people? Were they people in your phone already? What was the direction you went in there?
Yeah, I mean, I just started actually. I mean, even just through AI, I also asked who could I be asking in the local area. But I think that a lot of it was just a list of people that I put together of possible guests. You know, they might say no as well, but people that I would ask. And so already by then I'd met people from local charities and businesses, that kind of thing as well. And then the Chamber of Commerce CEO, he's who I asked for my first guest. And a lot of these people were very happy to come on, and a lot of them even now are still like this is their first podcast that they've ever done. So it's quite good that I can even give them a bit of a platform to encourage them to go and do more as well. But it was just I've still got a long list of people that I can ask. But like I say, at the moment, I'm filming enough just from people that have asked us as well.
And so you've had the mayor on already.
Yeah.
Listen to that
Yes.
one. You've had the local MP on as well.
Yeah.
You've had some
Yeah.
pretty good names on there already.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I have been debating with one of our old MPs was Boris Johnson, so I might even have
Oh, boy.
to, yeah,
It would be entertaining. It would be very,
yeah,
yeah. I think the
yeah,
comment section would be lively, but it would definitely be
yeah,
entertaining to say the least.
yeah, yeah. And then there is a bit of discernment as to who to have on there as well. You know, not you don't want necessarily people that are going to be too controversial as well because you're associated with them. But at the same time, I do want to be fair. For example, across like local political parties, you know, not just to have one and have another as well, and that kind of thing. So there's a bit of skill involved with choosing who to have at least to begin with, anyway. And yeah, I think like I want to definitely get past the 20th episode because a lot of people say most
Top
podcasts don't last. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you get
exactly.
top 1% there. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
we're knocking on the front door of. I think we've nearly done 200 episodes or 250, something sort
really
of
good,
direction. We've got a bit of
amazing.
time to go. We've got a bit of catching up to. You wait till 6 days a week. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm going to take a stab in the dark here and say that you probably don't talk about property really at all on your podcast. I'd imagine it's kind of talking to the guests and Hillingdon related. Does property ever come up organically, or is this something that just doesn't really get spoken about?
Actually, it doesn't. I probably would say it doesn't really. You know, I'm not there trying to just, crowbar a property into the conversation, definitely. And I would also probably say that it's mainly like them talking anyway. So out of the 10, 12 minutes that we do a talk, because it's not really a full-on podcast, you could call it a microcast with quite a short. I'm probably doing less than 1 or 2 minutes of the talking anyway. So if I can chime in with something that from my own experience, I will do, and I'm learning how to be a good podcast host in that way. But no, not really, not really. But I'm very comfortable with that as well. Anyway, that's not what it's about.
Yeah, well, when you get some good tips and advice about being a podcast host, please let me know.
I
let,
get more from you.
let's do some final quick fire questions, shall we? You've been
Sure,
very
sure.
generous with your time, to say the least.
No problem.
So if a self-employed estate agent is listening to this and they want to become better known in their area, what are the big couple of things they should focus on straight away?
Well, I think like in terms of where the era where in between printed marketing materials and social media where both still work. There might be an idea at a time very soon where the printed marketing material might even phase out soon. But like I'd say, social media has is just a no-brainer. Like I mentioned, that there is a bit of a vacuum in our area. Not enough people do it. I know Toby Martin would wax lyrical about just keep doing videos. Gary Vee in America, the same kind of thing where none of us are really making enough social content. And even I would put myself in that, and I release 4 or 5 social posts a week, and it could be even more. And so I think to get into that frame of mind to actually record videos for social, because you can have all the kind of graphics in the world, in terms of like Canva templates and all that kind of stuff. But I'm a big believer in this whole era that we're living in. It's like a parasocial era where people can feel like they get to know you just through video. And there's something very psychological about seeing your face and the connections and building trust through that as well. So that whole, know, like, and trust, which you talk about a lot, it just naturally happens from social media videos. And then I would also just then explore just in terms of what there is in their local areas, in terms of what the council offer, what the Chamber of Commerce, ours is very active. It's actually the oldest one in the whole country, and it's massive. It's almost 500 people now. It's huge. But just to see what there is on offer on your doorstep, and not to then start to feel the onerous, thing of having to organize community events, because there's plenty probably going on in your area, and it would be a lot easier to just turn up to things rather than organize them. So that's what I'd probably say. So local events, which the council might show on their website, and then the social media. And then the last thing, which I probably don't do enough of, is the kind of campaigns, the marketing campaigns, which you told me off for the other day as well. I don't put it out as wide as I could do, and I should do really. But like I say, that just a mixture of those probably is the best thing as well.
Amazing. And final question yourself. If there was one big lesson you've learned from building a business through community, what do you reckon that would be?
I think just to really not be shy, because I think like so many people, especially in when you talk about charity owners and business owners and everything else, they're just so happy to meet you and that kind of thing. So I would say that you might think that you're going to have a bit of a negative reaction in some way, saying not many people are wanting to engage, but the openness to meet and to build community, especially in the light of after COVID and how society has got more fragmented and stuff. There's so many people that are really up for just joining on with what you do and supporting what you do a lot more than you would think.
Darling, you've been an amazing guest yet all over again. Thank you for being literally the community superstar stylist, and thank you so much for coming back on, mate. We'll definitely be back on the future. Don't worry, you're never far away from a podcast. I'll be back on the future for sure. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Awesome. Good to hear. Thanks so much. Take care.